Previously on Alan Wake. Just like that, my mind was clear. Zane had been right. I could think clearly again. But I couldn't survive in this place the way he had, and I might not make it back a second time. Leaving this place would be hard. Maybe impossible. It wouldn't take much for my thoughts to stray again. It was too easy to get lost in the dark place. Before, I was ready to curl up and die, let myself slip away. But here I was, the yet unwritten future waiting to unfold before me. A sequel to Departure. My name is Alan Wake, and I'm a writer.
You're goddamn right.
CJ has to bet, and he's also dumb. Even though he's blind, he's not very fun. He has his own talk show, it's every gamer's dream. It's a crazy little talk show, and it's called Cookies and Cream.
Hey there, it's Cookies, and every generation in the gaming medium, there's always that it game. This game in particular is different from every genre, but regardless, there's always a singular title that stands amongst its peers as something truly unique, original, for the future of game design. Like an NFL draft class gone right. When I was in middle school, BioShock was that it game that comes to mind, with its original story setup, killer combat loop, iconic visual sound design, and a mind-boggling narrative that still echoes throughout gaming today. Experiencing Alan Wake 2 for the first time felt like just that. A game which saw a brutal development cycle, and I mean absolutely brutal, but at release has finally encapsulated the genre it is based in. This game isn't merely a continuation of Alan's 13-year journey through the dark place. It's a magnification of the future of single-player narrative adventures. Stick around to find out what I'm talking about. And remember, if you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe, or if not, dislike and describe how you read about this review on a manuscript page you found the other night outside the Oh Dear Diner.
Get back in the cell, Stephen King. The only way you're leaving this place is over my dead...
Wait a minute. I know.
Remedy is borderline a AAA studio with an indie development mindset. And Alan Wake 2 is the most ambitious game Remedy has ever made. That I will say first and foremost. I will also say that if you were a fan of the first Alan Wake, you're already going to love this and you need to go buy it right now. How about for those who are interested in diving in for the first time? Well, for starters, the title itself is a dual narrative where we can transfer between both Saga, an FBI agent in Bright Falls, and Alan Wake, the tortured writer trapped in the dark place. The game does a tremendous job balancing the story beats for each protagonist, as you can switch between either at your whim. Swapping at different times can also offer unique perspectives you may miss in your first, second, or third playthrough. Now, in GTA 5, you're able to swap between characters at a moment's notice, which allows you to experience different parts of the story or just goof around. Spider-Man 2 most recently allows you to switch from each Spider-Man throughout the journey. However, this is the first game that I've played that used the dual protagonist setup and takes that design philosophy to the next level. Some of which I refuse to spoil for you, but let's just say there are some interesting tricks that Remedy has up their sleeve with how you engage with the story. What's so fascinating too is that depending on when you play which sections, it can give you a lot of different perspectives. The beginning portion and the end portion is controlled by Remedy, but how you get there is entirely up to the player and how they want to pace out the narratives. That goes with the episodic storyline that is also pulled from the first game, with original music content that, don't worry, we're getting there. Similar to films like Memento and Seven, Alan Wake 2 begs to be replayed multiple times, as there's so much detail that you will miss your first time around. There are so many nuances and connections between various items, characters, events, environments, and much more. Remedy successfully plays off our expectations with what questions we want answered. What is Saga's connection to Alan? Where has Alan been the past 13 years? The story subverts our expectations, becoming a narrative I never thought we would get, and it's all the better for it. The cast is remarkably memorable, with beings like Mr. Door.
We have a great show for you here tonight. Alan Wake, one of my all-time favorite writers, and guests on the show.
He's here to talk about his latest book. Initiation tells the story of a fictional writer named Alan Wake, who is trapped in a nightmare, desperately trying to find the manuscript of a novel he has forgotten he has written.
And Alex Casey.
There's a piece of evidence, a manuscript of a novel. You wouldn't know anything about it?
A manuscript? What manuscript? I need to see it.
Rumor had it the manuscript contained the details of the murders. A murder cult was following the story to commit their gruesome acts. Was Wake their leader? Had he written it? How far would he go to create a perfect work of art? Or would he be the next?
Absolutely stealing the show when they are on. The pacing is stellar with how it keeps you engaged throughout various gameplay systems we'll discuss shortly. And for Alan Wake fans, you can rest easy knowing that not only is this the greatest story Remedy has told, it is a faithful and empowering continuation of that cult hit we fell in love with all those years ago. For newcomers, Saga's portions help bridge the gap from the first entry while posing questions about this engaging mystery, and Alan's portions twist and turn to give us that eerie sense of a man trying to overcome his own guilt and make his way out of this supposed dark place. A lot of the love for the previous entry was due to the environmental storytelling, and that is no slouch here in the sequel. In Alan's portions, you can see the dark places bending and manifesting off of Alan's psyche, constantly hiding secret messages within a New York as he sees it. In Saga's portions, you get a ton of insight into the characters in the real world, the cult of the tree, and how the world itself bridges the gap within the dark place, and how they coexist with one another. The most impactful aspect of this story, beyond the downright masterful performances, especially from Alan's voice and model.
Who are you? Do I know you?
I'm your friend Tom. Tom Zane. There's nothing to worry about.
Tom. The poet. The diver. You look different.
That was just a role. A character.
I won't spoil anything here, but be prepared to have your jaw to the floor. This game looks fucking beautiful. It's the mixing of video game graphics to live action pays off tremendously. Not only does it show how powerful Remedy's refined gaming engine is, but it also plays into the narrative just as much as the phrase, "Would you kindly," did for BioShock. There's this uneasy nature with the dreamlike qualities of the dark place in which Alan Wake 2 wastes no time hooking you on. It also goes to show that Alan Wake 2 is a well-paced and executed horror experience. There are so many aspects this game nails from other titles while also giving that Remedy flair. No pun intended. The Taken have gotten a massive overhaul, giving this twisted, eerie sense of inhabiting areas of the past, like the ghosts in Fatal Frame. The way that enemies act as environmental puzzles and strict use of item management, a la Resident Evil. The psychological and body horror akin to Silent Hill 2, the Stephen King influences still heavily worn on the sleeves of this writer, alongside implications of David Lynch much more in the sequel than we've ever seen before. The atmosphere tells the Dead Space remake to hold their fucking beer.
I'm a count off, Jab. 1, 2, 3, 4. Get up.
It even takes concepts from Dark Souls where your death doesn't break the immersion in the game. The game itself never breaks character. You can tell the folks at Remedy wrote this game as an I love you letter to horror, but go the extra mile to throw wrenches into what we have been conditioned with as gamers in the past. Take for example the Taken in Alan's storyline. These enemies serve more as environmental obstacles due to the limited resources akin to Resident Evil. How do we make this concept more engaging? While in Resident Evil the creatures have varied attack patterns you can memorize and play off of, Alan Wake 2's enemies are unpredictable. There are numerous times where traversing an environment you see these beings going about their day. Some may be sitting on a bench, others casually brushing up on you, and then those that will suddenly shift and start attacking you. It's near impossible to predict what these enemies will do, making every encounter tense and unnerving. And while I mentioned that concepts were taken from Dark Souls, a lot of that even stems into the action and animations, as enemies have graphical tells that you will need to study in order to survive. I also like the writer's dilemma in this environmental storytelling. As a writer, Alan obsessed with capturing the darkness in humanity. In New York, having suffered writer's block, those everyday people he would observe became engulfed by his lack of knowledge on who they are, forcing him to project his own fears and traumas. Being shrouded in darkness perfectly embodies this ideal, and with the gameplay of using your flashlight to illuminate the unknown, it's another clear example of how brilliant this game is on a fundamental gameplay level. Not only does Remedy put all of these pieces in a nice pot, but they don't overcook, with each section never stalling for longer than it needs to. Which goes into the gameplay of this title, and man oh man oh man, this hype train has only just begun. If the original Alan Wake game was a 70-30 split, 70% story, 30% action, Alan Wake's American Nightmare was 30% story, 70% action, Alan Wake 2 is 80% story, 20% action. The game's combat has the precise snap feel of the original, but with less encounters, not a single one feels like a repeat. Each set piece is crafted beautifully and always keeps you on the edge of your seat. One section you may be heading through the city of New York and trigger a police siren, bringing a dozen of these Taken out, whereas the next section may have you playing detective, piecing the mystery together in your mind space. Both characters have a mind space where a lot can happen. We can connect the dots to the grand mysteries within this title needing to be solved. We can transfer storylines. Heck, we can even rewrite the story that the Dark Place has its hands on, which outright changes the level around Alan in real time. The game uses these tools to wonderful effect, constantly putting the gamer on the edge of their seat and displaying Alan's internal mindset. You will constantly rely on light to escape the darkness, but in more ways than one. Surrounded, pop a flare for some breathing room. Lost with nowhere to go, channel some light into your mystical light stick and change the environment right in front of you in the blink of an eye. Expecto Patronum this motherfucker. This game, like its cult classic, feels unlike anything else on the market. As Remedy's first horror game, they nailed standing out in a crowded space. Heck, we have to be honest. This game is a big reason why Alone in the Dark even got pushed back into January of next year, and I can almost guarantee it's also a big reason why we haven't heard as much Silent Hill news as we probably should have. But I digress. I also have to add that all scene transitions and going in and out of your character's mind space are instantaneous, as if the presentation for this title wasn't already outstanding.
that delivered me back to the street. What did the mystery caller said? If the waves keep pushing you away, you just need to find another way in.
Never was your story! You will drown here!
And this bleeds into the soundtrack, which is helmed by such iconic artists like Poets of the Fall, who now take on more prominent roles playing the old gods of Asgard. They are much more involved in the plot, and you're gonna love them. You just if you've experienced them before, you know what you're gonna get. If you haven't experienced them before, sit back. You're gonna love it. The music aids in telling the story just like the original, and these songs slap so hard, yeah, I'ma buy the vinyl, and shit, now I gotta buy a record player. Fuck my life. The ambiance and score are also handled by the original composer for Alan Wake, which both aids in establishing continuity, while also evolving the formula of what Alan Wake's journey has transcended into. One of his biggest fears in the first game was that the story being written would turn into a horror. Now that it has, you see where I'm going with this. Now, the tough part with reviewing this game is that so much of what makes it brilliant needs to be experienced. The journey ranges between 16 to 20 hours, with a sensational conclusion that, just like in the Silent Hill 2, has me sitting there and pondering more and more of the game's set pieces and where the next entry could inevitably take us. Just like the first Alan Wake, it makes me want to make some mocktails and sit on the porch with the boys discussing fan theories. Is everything perfect? No. I will say from a narrative point, there are moments where it can become easy to get lost with the amount of characters coming on stage at a time, especially since the game, despite its reasonably long length, has the job of bringing new players up to speed, answering Alan's dilemma with initiation, while also laying the foundation for what's to come in the Remedy connected universe. Which, by the way, don't fret, Remedy fans, they do a good job of that, and the Easter eggs with potential threads going forward have me excited for this new age Remedy studio. I will say, sections and Saga's portions in the first half of the game can drag a little too long. That could also be more so because I'm already well versed with Alan Wake, just like him. I've had 13 years to really think and divulge like how the heck this story is going to play out. The one thing that has been a caveat in a lot of Remedy games since Max Payne 2 is environmental combat, and I will say there are some environmental interactions in this game with enemies that don't play out well and are much more frustrating than they are engaging or to build tension. There are some frustrating sections in the latter half of the game that the combat just isn't balanced enough for. Small potatoes in the grand scheme of things, but I did want to get that out there because I've had it hard on for Alan Wake 2 for like 20 something minutes, so I gotta throw in some issues. Overall, Alan Wake 2 feels like a passion project. You can tell Remedy poured their hearts into this one over the countless iterations. The journey was long and treacherous. However, just like Alan inevitably comes to where we are today for the better. From the web series to the previous entries, Control, Max Payne, and the new show deal with AMC, Alan Wake has overcome the odds and is a perfect example of never giving up. And that is gaming with a purpose. The big question was, how were they going to end Alan Wake's journey? And it's best to look at this game not as an end-all be-all for the story cliffhanger that we had from the first entry, but a beautiful continuation of Alan's journey. If you can go into this game with that mindset, all the pieces from the environmental storytelling, the combat, the design of the environments, the enemies, the characters, the weird niche sense of the dialogue, the fourth wall breaking taken to like the next level, Remedy's indie style take on noir, which has never been displayed to this degree in gaming outside of, say, The Wolf Among Us. All these pieces come together to provide what is fundamentally one of the best horror games I've ever played. And this is one of those games where, just like BioShock, it is setting the bar for the genre. And in that case, Alan Wake 2 deserves 5 manuscript pages out of 5. Did you like Alan Wake 2? Have you played Alan Wake 2? Are you looking forward to Alan Wake 2? Did you like how much I talked about Alan Wake 2? Comment below, let me know the vibes. As always, thank you for tuning in to Cookies and Cream. And I have to reiterate, I really love Alan Wake 2. When I got through to the conclusion of this title, there was one specific quote from the first game that thankfully still resonates with the plot, despite all the advancements with the Remedy connected universe, as well as the story internally to Alan Wake. Here's that quote, and I hope everyone has a kick-ass night.
Stephen King once wrote that nightmares exist outside of logic, and there's little fun to be had in explanations. They're antithetical to the poetry of fear. In a horror story, the victim keeps asking why, but there can be no explanation, and there shouldn't be one. The unanswered mystery is what stays with us the longest, and it's what we'll remember in the end. My name is Alan Wake. I'm a writer.